Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On the show today, we'll talk with Harries from Kansas Wheat and get his interpretation of this year's wheat tour and what it could possibly mean for this year's wheat crop. Also, it's May. That means it's beef month in Kansas. We'll also have reports from the Kansas Farm Bureau and hear once again from Kansas Wheat, and our updates from the Kansas Livestock Association and Paragon Ag Advisors. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.
Closed captioning brought to you by
The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. KansasSoybeans.org.
Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com. Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org.
Well, one of the rites of spring just took place a few days ago, and that was the Wheat Quality Council Tour's Winter Wheat Tour. And Harries from Kansas Wheat joins us to talk about it. Aaron, what an interesting time you had.
It always is. You know, I don't think there's any crop that's ever alike from one year to another. And we were a step ahead of last year not walking through snow in western Kansas, but at the same time it was really dry. But I think the bottom line is we're looking at a pretty short crop, not only short in bushels, but short in stature. So, in fact, we may have the smallest crop since 1989 in Kansas.
So what were some of your general observations, with that short wheat, smaller heads? Is that what you saw pretty much throughout the state? It
was. I was surprised at consistency, how short and thin the wheat was. We've got short wheat for a couple of different reasons. The first one being that it was drought stressed and it advanced its pace of growth. Actually, in the first field in Dickinson County I stopped at, we had wheat that was 6 inches tall and about to head. So that field will not likely be harvested just because of the challenge of harvesting it. But most of the short wheat was behind schedule. Some of it just jointing, and a lot of that was compounded by dry weather and cold weather. And nature kind of has a way of finding a way to close that gap. And usually that doesn't come at the benefit of the wheat plant. So that plant's going to try to catch up here, especially with this warmer weather. And none of that really is going to help the yield potential.
And the yield potential, what was it, about 38?
37, 38
okay.
bushels an acre. And so, our 5-year average is right around 42, 43 bushels an acre. So well below average. And planted acres, 7.7 million. I think most people on the tour anticipate the abandonment acres are going to be higher than normal too. Normal being around 6%. And I'm pretty confident that most people think it's going to be 10% or higher.
So with being behind about 3 weeks, does this, if we do get some time in range, could we make a crop? I know some said, Dr. Lalato at K-State said, well, if weather conditions are such, let's not give up on it just yet. Right,
I think the potential is still there, obviously. The last rains we've had didn't help as much as I anticipated, but probably bought us some more time. The wheat still clearly looks drought stressed. It has a bluish cast to the leaves, which is a sign of that. If we get more rain, I think what it's going to do is allow that grain to fill out in the head. Maybe not add a lot of bushels, but at least it would give us some good quality wheat to bring in and add a few bushels to the crop.
Some disease pressures seen in some areas?
Very isolated so far. The weather's been too cold. I'm sure we'll see that move in from the south, but not a lot of disease pressure. I suppose that's one silver lining.
The other thing is people from all over the country, all over the world come to Kansas. Talk about those interactions. 95
people on this tour this year, amazing high number, and they're from all walks of life in the agriculture industry, millers, bakers, farmers, brokers, not only from all across the United States, but we had a guest with us from China. So it really has developed into a good way to educate the industry about the wheat crop in Kansas, about the wheat crop in the United States, and it's a great experience.
Well, Harries from Kansas Wheat has joined us. We've talked about the annual wheat tour that took place just a few days ago here in Kansas. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. Grassandgrain.com. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com.
Imagine having someone help you pick the best corn hybrids for every field on your farm. Your Oldie representative can combine your data with his data to offer a field-by-field prescription. Contact Oldie Seed today at 877-692-4555.
All over the country, more and more communities are making the change to biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil. And the decision continues, improving the health and welfare for millions of Americans while adding billions to our national economy.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
What if U.S. soybean oil were an industry sensation? If end users started asking for it by name? That future is here, the time is now. To meet customer demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in varieties that produce oil with increased functionality. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
And it is May, and that means it's Beef Month in the state of Kansas. And to talk about it, Kevin Thielen, who is Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council. Kevin, happy Beef Month.
Yeah, and I think, we live in Kansas, and producers are saying, well, Kevin and Ken, Beef Month is every month, and I couldn't agree more. What's cool about May is we get a proclamation from the governor declaring it, and it's kind of an opportunity for us to really celebrate producers and how they raise cattle in our state.
And it's bipartisan, 34 years already?
Yeah, 34th year. You probably couldn't get something like that done at the State House very easy. So I think that just speaks to the nature of how important the beef industry is for the state's economy. And we know that farmers and ranchers are very involved in their local community. In fact, that's something that the Checkoff now has some data that would say, they are so involved in their local community, involved in their church and the schools, and very active members of their community. And I think we have to remember that, and honestly, we need to celebrate that.
Well, part of the celebration is trying to engage with all different types of people. And one of the things that you've done is really taken that almost to the next level, especially in trying to communicate with Millennium.
Yes, and we have a consumer in that millennial who is very, I don't want to say concerned, but I think that's a lot of times how people describe it. They want to know where their food comes from, and they want to understand it and have that ability to ask questions. And so we have, in the last 2 years, really focused on a very robust digital platform, trying to make sure that we can tell that story, we can explain what production is, but we also, on the back end of it, have the ability to answer those questions. And it's working really well for us, and the team has really embraced kind of that new technology.
And people always want to know more about where their food comes from, and that's one of the things that you're reaching out also to work with some of the grocery stores and other food providers to give the people the right answers and the truth.
Well, right, and the digital aspect is just one thing that we do. We have registered dietitians on staff here who engage with nutrition professionals because they get those questions. You think about an RD who works at Hy-Vee, and they get all kinds of questions about food. It can be nutrition, but also production related. So we do a lot of engagement with those groups to try to educate them on nutrition and also how cattle are raised. We have engagement with retail, so meat cutters and marketing managers at the retail level to try to make sure they understand how to market beef, whether it's new cuts and the whole gauntlet. And also we do a lot of work with chefs. So really trying to get out there, and that's a change for us over the last couple of years, to really focus on those people who are the influencers.
We're talking with Kevin Thielen, Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council. It is Beef Month in Kansas. We'll take a break and be back with more in just a moment.
This segment brought to you by Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. Grassandgrain.com. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com.
And welcome back. May is Beef Month in Kansas. Kevin Thielen, Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council, joins us. And Kevin, one of the things that you and your group does is really try to find out what the consumers really want in their beef experience.
Well, yeah, and I mean, consumers, drive demand, and we are, I think, doing a better job from a checkoff standpoint of really understanding what that consumer's thinking. And the checkoff does a lot of consumer research, and kind of in the spirit of that and using that research to then make marketing decisions, our board funded a research project that was specific to the Kansas City consumer, which is our target for the Kansas Beef Council. And what we found was that, there's a lot of the similarities between our Kansas City consumer compared to the national, but there's also a lot of differences, and one of the things that is similar, taste is paramount. If you don't have a product that tastes good, the consumer's not going to come back. And that's still our leading factor from a consumer preference standpoint. Creeping in there would have to be a mention of production, and that need, like we talked about in the last segment, to have a millennial consumer who has questions about where cattle are raised and where their food comes from. And we found that in Kansas City also. I think we also kind of observed some regional differences. Kansas City's a barbecue town, and so I think that they even may be a little more taste-centric than what the national folks might be. And the other thing that we found was that nutrition and nutrition messaging was a little less important in Kansas City compared to national consumers. And so our board of directors, who would be made up of cattle producers across the state, kind of use that information to make funding decisions. And Ken, that's why we send a lot of our dollars that we collect here in the state of Kansas outside of Kansas, because really, if you're talking about increasing demand, there's a lot of consumers outside of our borders. We have 3 times the number of cattle that we do people. So it makes sense from a management standpoint to send those dollars to where the people are. So we do a lot of programs in New York and California and Florida. We actually fund staff positions in those markets, but we also invest in the national program, because that's how we get dollars to where the people are.
Yeah, sometimes you might think, well, it should stay here, and we don't have the people, but really, some of those, and it's all different types of cuts.
It is, and focusing on all different types, all different products, if you will, and kind of with that mantra of, if we can increase demand for every segment, we make everybody a little more money. So that's the overarching goal for our checkoff.
All right, Kevin. So if folks want more information during Beef Month, how can they go online to get that?
Well, I would encourage them to go to our webpage, which is kansasbeef.org, or follow us on Facebook. Both of those would have information and get information that would be relevant to what they're looking for.
Kevin Thielen, Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council, has joined us. Stay with us. You're watching the Kansas Ag Report.
American farmers may have a higher rate of suicide than veterans. While comparing these numbers from two separately conducted studies from two different entities isn't conclusive, the trends that have emerged are alarming. It's a rough time economically in agriculture, and finances are at the forefront of every farmer's mind. When you're feeling the strain of what seems to be a mounting debt load that's impossible to escape, talk to the experts at the Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. They provide confidential financial counseling and legal advice, as well as mediation services and farm and ranch succession planning. In addition, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services supports the Farm Analyst Program. Farm analysts or trained extension agents will travel directly to a farmer's home to provide private and financial business advice. Dr. Mike Rossman, a psychologist and a leading expert in agricultural behavioral health, hypothesizes that when factors such as economic pressure interrupt a farmer's natural instincts and they can't fulfill this instinctual purpose, they fall into despair. He thinks this may be a plausible explanation of the motivations of farmers to be agricultural producers and sometimes to end their own lives. If anything we've talked about hits home for you or someone you know, remember that you're not alone in this and there are resources out there for you. None of us can single-handedly increase the prices in the grain or cattle markets, but all of us have the ability to save a life with a listening ear and a well-placed suggestion. For more resources, please visit kansaswheat.org.
Kansas Farm Bureau understands the importance of connecting with those outside of agriculture who can share with others how food is grown and raised in the state. One of the key constituents we reach out to are those who work directly with clients on food-related issues, more specifically, registered dietitians and nutritionists. We found this group of influencers often hear the same questions we hear in agriculture. Things like, why and how are antibiotics and hormones used on farm animals? Should I be concerned about pesticides on the foods I eat? And how do I know what I'm feeding my family is safe? Every year we partner with our friends at Kansas Pork and Kansas Soybeans to offer fact-based information to these groups at their annual meetings. We provide a one-on-one connection point for them to get answers to some of these common questions. A handful of farmers and ranchers take time away from their operations to spend time connecting and conversing about hot topics, and it's often surprising how eye-opening it can be for both the dietitians and nutritionists and the farmers. Each of them come away having learned something from the other group, and it helps build beneficial relationships for all involved. Opportunities like these continue to show us how important it is for farmers and ranchers to step outside of their comfort zone and share the farm story with those not directly involved with agriculture. If you'd like to participate in opportunities like this, go to our website at www.kfb.org and click on the Get Involved link. We have a host of trainings and options available.
What if U.S. soybean oil were an industry sensation? If end users started asking for it by name? That future is here. The time is now. To meet customer demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in varieties that produce oil with increased functionality. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
You need a partner that you can count on to be there for your business. Providing a depth of understanding to risk management issues so you don't have to. A knowledgeable support team located in your area, delivering products and services to make you more successful.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Imagine having someone help you pick the best corn hybrids for every field on your farm. Your Oldie representative can combine your data with his data to offer a field-by-field prescription. Contact Oldie Seed today at 877-692-4555.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
U.S. Senator Jerry Moran and U.S. Representative Roger Marshall led a group of their congressional colleagues in sending a letter to U.S. Department of Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke asking him not to list the lesser prairie chicken under the Endangered Species Act. The group instead encouraged the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to collaborate with landowners on positive solutions that protect the species without causing unnecessary harm to the livelihoods of people in the normal range of the bird. The letter reminded Secretary Zinke millions of private and public dollars invested in habitat preservation have enhanced the lesser prairie chicken population. Surveys show the number of birds has risen by an estimated 71% since the peak of the drought in 2013. Those who signed the letter reminded the Secretary this all was done through on-the-ground conservation efforts and without Endangered Species Act regulations in place. The lesser prairie chicken was listed as a threatened species in March 2014 following a multi-year drought that reduced population numbers. That listing was vacated in September of 2015 by the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas because the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service failed to consider the impact of voluntary conservation efforts to preserve the species. Others signing the letter included U.S. Senator Pat Roberts, U.S. Representative Ron Estes, and members of Congress from Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado.
Good morning. I'm Cody Wintershe with Paragon Ag Advisors. It's hard to believe it's already partway through May. Just a month ago or so, Mother Nature wasn't sure if it wanted to let winter go or not. Now in some areas, it's already fast-forwarded to summer-type temperatures, almost skipping spring entirely. In conjunction, the nation's planting pace started out fairly slow, but based off last week's progress report, we've all but caught up in corn and even passed the average pace in soybeans. However, the market is certainly aware of the ongoing droughty conditions the southern plains are enduring. Furthermore, our neighbors in South America seem to still be struggling with weather issues of their own. Argentina is almost going from one extreme to the other now, almost getting too much rain, which is raising concerns on harvest delays and the crop quality. The latest development, however, is in Brazil, where concerns have flared up regarding their second corn crop. We haven't really even gotten into the potential weather issues for our fall crops either. All in all, though, this doesn't sound all that unfamiliar with any other year, does it? Spring and summer weather around the world move the markets and bring about marketing opportunities. Challenge yourself, though. Are you satisfied or comfortable with how you're currently marketing? If the answer to that is no or not really, then what are you going to do to improve that part of your operation? Marketing isn't necessarily hard, but it is certainly not easy. It does take time and trying to be as emotionless as you can. Easier said than done, I know, but in the words of General Patton, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week. Have a great day.
Well, that's our show today. Be sure to be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching the Kansas Ag Report. We'll see you next week.
Closed captioning brought to you by
The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. KansasSoybeans.org.
Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com. Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org.
What if U.S. soybean oil were an industry sensation? If end users started asking for it by name? That future is here. The time is now. To meet customer demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in varieties that produce oil with increased functionality. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.